My family has a small, old vacation home tucked away in the Colorado mountains. It's the kind of place you might drive by and not notice, but for us, it's always been a special place. My parents loved to ski, so this house was perfect for them. It's been in our family for as long as I can remember, way before I was born. The house itself has seen better days. It's almost 40 years old, and while my dad's done his best to fix it, there's only so much you can do. The roof creaks, the floor is grown, and the paint on the walls is chipped by the strong mountain winds. Sometimes my dad talks about tearing it down and building a new one. But that's his decision, not mine. This story happened about 15 years ago when I was just a kid, 8 years old, and my older brother Josh was 11. We had just arrived in Colorado during a huge snowstorm. The snow was coming down hard, and flurries turned into a full blizzard. It was so thick and heavy you could barely see a few feet in front of you. But, of course, Josh and I were eager to get outside and play. What made the place so special for us kids was how much space we had to run around. It felt like our own little winter wonderland. Our house sat on a big piece of land, surrounded by trees. There was a long, winding road that went down from the house, eventually leading to a few other houses. Back then, there were barely any people around. It was the perfect place for hide-and-seek, snowball fights, or anything that needed a lot of space. Josh and I, of course, took full advantage of it. We put on our snow clothes and went outside to play one of our favorite games, a snowball fight. But this wasn't just any snowball fight. It was a big, strategic battle. We'd each pick a fort anywhere on the property, but we had to tell the other person where we were building it. The goal was simple: steal the jewel, a giant snowball, from the other fort and bring it back to yours without getting hit. We'd set up snow forts as barricades and leave the snowball behind, ready to be taken. Over the years, we had made up our own rules and perfected the game. Josh decided to set up his fort at the neighbor's house, which was usually empty. The people who owned it didn't live there full time, and in the winter they were hardly ever there. It was the perfect place for a fort. We'd sometimes play there since no one was around to stop us. We'd build snow walls, hide behind them, and sneak around trying to grab the jewel. I started down the road toward Josh's fort, trudging through the snow. The wind was strong, but my thick layers kept me warm. The snowflakes felt sharp against my face as I struggled to move forward. As I got closer, the storm got worse. Everything around me seemed to turn into a blur. My visibility was almost gone, just swirling white everywhere. I reached the end of our driveway and looked through the snow-covered trees toward the neighbor's house, trying to make out any sign of Josh. I saw his fort, but Josh was nowhere to be seen. I figured he must have already set it up, so I waited for him to blow his whistle, the signal that the game was about to begin. But I waited and waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I could hear nothing but the wind and the crunch of snow under my boots. At this point, I started wondering if maybe I just couldn't hear the whistle because of the wind. It wasn't unusual for sounds to get lost in a snowstorm like this. Maybe Josh was waiting for me. After all, I hadn't even seen him yet. I thought about whether to take the road or head straight into the woods. I didn't want to walk through the woods. The dense trees and the swirling snow already made it feel like they were closing in on me. So, I decided the road was the better option, even though it was covered in snow and hadn't been plowed. The walk was slow but steady, and the snow was deep enough to make each step harder. But with all the thick layers of clothes my mom made me wear, I didn't feel the cold as much as I probably should have. Finally, I made it to the edge of the neighbor's property. I looked at the yard, trying to find Josh, but I didn't see him. There was a strange emptiness in the air. No Josh, no movement, nothing. Just the sound of the wind and the snow pressing down on everything. I looked at the woods and the yard beyond, but the blizzard made everything look like one big white blur. I slowly walked toward Josh's fort. It was just like always, built with snow walls and the snowball hidden behind them. But Josh wasn't anywhere around. I stood there, confused, wondering where he could be. It didn't make sense. He had been there just a little while ago, right? That's when I heard a woman's voice calling out from the house. "Excuse me, are you looking for your brother?" I turned, startled, and saw an older woman standing in the doorway of the neighbor's house. The house had a spooky, abandoned look to it. Her face was partly hidden by shadow, making it hard to see her expression, but something was unsettling about the way she spoke. Her voice was calm, too calm. I told her I was playing a game with my brother, but her answer was strange. "Your brother isn't here," she said. The woman didn't move, but she kept smiling, that strange smile that made my skin crawl. As I got closer, I saw something even stranger, a figure in the upstairs window looking down at me. For a second, I thought it was Josh, but the figure had half their face hidden. It wasn't Josh. The figure was standing completely still, just staring at me. Then I noticed something else. There were more footprints in the snow, fresh ones, leading to the front door, but they didn't make sense. They had to be Josh's, but why had he gone into the house? Suddenly, the woman waved me toward the door, inviting me inside to get out of the cold. I froze, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I called out for Josh again, but there was no answer. That's when I saw something else. The other trail of footprints in the snow didn't go toward the door. It turned around. It was like Josh, or whoever it was, had decided to leave and head back into the woods, away from the house. I heard slow footsteps from inside the house, heavy and steady. It sounded like someone was coming down the stairs. I didn't stick around to find out who. I ran, pushing through the snow and not looking back. My heart was pounding, and my legs were burning from the effort, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. I could hear the woman shouting something, but I couldn't understand the words. I didn't stop. I reached the end of the road, gasping for air, and saw my dad and Josh standing in the driveway. They had come to find me. Before I could even explain what had just happened, Josh started talking about people in the neighbor's house, people who had called him inside. It was the same thing I had seen. Without wasting a moment, my dad grabbed something from the shed, probably a flashlight or a tool, and went straight for the house. Josh and I stayed with Mom, trying to understand what had just happened. It felt like a bad dream, but the fear in my chest made it feel real. When my dad came back, he was pale and serious. The front door was locked, and no one answered when he knocked. He didn't waste any time, heading to a neighbor's house to get them to call the owners. The news we got next was chilling. The owners weren't supposed to be there. No one was supposed to be there that weekend. The police were called, and Josh and I were asked to describe the woman we'd seen. I could still feel that strange smile, burned into my mind. In the end, the back door to the house was found unlocked, but the house was empty. No one had been inside. Nothing was taken. That was the last time we ever set foot on that property. Something about that day, that feeling of being watched, has stayed with me all these years. Every time I think about it, I still feel that cold shiver down my spine. And thank God we never went inside that house.